What if there existed a modest natural compound, smaller than your thumbnail, that when carefully held in your mouth for just a minute could restore your energy, improve how blood flows through your body, and reawaken a biological strength that's been quietly dimming for years? No costly medications, no unwanted reactions, no artificial gimmicks. This compound comes from something most people recognize. Odds are it's been gathering dust in your spice rack, disregarded, undervalued, simply waiting for someone to reveal its genuine power. I recognize if that sounds improbably easy, but stay engaged because over the next few minutes, I'll demonstrate exactly how this frequently ignored seasoning is empowering men and women past 60 to reclaim their vigor, their determination, and their passion for living, supported by genuine research, not hype. By the time we finish, you'll understand the application technique, grasp the scientific mechanism, and possess a straightforward approach you can implement immediately. I'm Dr. William Lee, a physician and medical researcher. Throughout my profession, I've examined the body's most core mechanisms, their proper function, their deterioration, and critically, how they recuperate when supplied with appropriate biological information. My investigation has involved research facilities, clinical settings, and medical centers across multiple continents. And I've repeatedly discovered one fundamental truth. The human system possesses an extraordinary, persistent power to rebuild if we furnish what it genuinely requires. The individuals I've collaborated with experiencing depleted energy, diminished vitality, broken sleep rhythms, and fading enthusiasm weren't fundamentally broken. Their bodies simply lacked the proper environment needed to operate optimally. And establishing those conditions doesn't invariably demand medical intervention. Occasionally, it originates from something considerably more elementary. Everything we're discussing today, restoring the energy and drive you thought had disappeared, this is precisely what my patients bring up constantly. I gathered all the guidance I offer to my own patients and assembled one straightforward approach for thriving with greater vitality after 60. It covers 28 significant health changes that happen with aging, cardiovascular function, glucose metabolism, cognitive sharpness, physical balance, and there's substantially more included. Tens of thousands have already utilized it, and many have rediscovered their independence and a vibrant life well into their 60s and 70s. You'll find the link in the video description and the pinned comment, so retrieve it whenever you're prepared. What I'm about to describe isn't marketing, isn't a fad, and isn't a treatment for the financially privileged. It involves comprehending how vitality functions biologically and leveraging one of nature's most potent, thoroughly investigated substances to support it. If something in this resonates with what you've experienced, write yes in the comments. If you're uncertain, write maybe. Either way, I'm grateful you're listening because this information might represent exactly what your body has been seeking. Before continuing, subscribe and activate notifications. Everything here targets people wanting increased energy, sharper thinking, and growing self-assurance through their aging years. You won't want to overlook what's ahead. Let me introduce the actual substance and its scientific foundation. That substance is clove. Understanding why clove matters, and I find this genuinely fascinating from a scientific perspective, has nothing to do with historical use or traditional wisdom. It involves one specific component called eugenol. Eugenol represents the dominant active molecule within clove's essential oil. It's what generates that distinctive, warm, penetrating, almost electric sensation the instant you bite into a whole dried clove. And precisely then, something significant starts happening inside your body. Eugenol is taken in quickly through oral tissues and reaches your circulation in mere moments. Upon entry, it influences several bodily systems concurrently. Let me highlight the most critical mechanisms. Initially, eugenol functions as a natural blood vessel relaxer. It facilitates the loosening and expansion of blood vessels, specifically the smaller arteries that have a tendency to become rigid and constricted as we grow older. This carries substantial significance because vessel rigidity represents one of the most widespread and least recognized factors in the exhaustion, mental fog, and physical weakening that men past 60 encounter. When passages narrow, circulation to the mind, skeletal systems, and tissues requiring steady oxygen delivery diminishes. Physical strength fades, mental sharpness declines, and bodily performance, inclusive of sexual function, gradually weakens without obvious cause. Eugenol works by loosening the muscular tissue in arterial walls, promoting smoother, speedier blood transport throughout your system. The second point, which I consider the most scientifically remarkable, is that eugenol encourages your body to produce more nitric oxide. That designation should sound recognizable. Nitric oxide is the identical biological messenger at the core of most contemporary treatments for erectile dysfunction. It's the fundamental signal ordering blood vessels to open and blood circulation to surge. The crucial distinction between the medication route and this strategy involves this fundamental reality. A pharmaceutical forces that reaction, circumventing your body's inherent regulatory networks. Eugenol, when experienced naturally through chewing whole cloves, encourages your body's own mechanism for creating nitric oxide gently, persistently, and maintaining physiological harmony. This isn't speculation. Eugenol's vessel-relaxing and nitric oxide-generating effects are established in scientific journals, and this represents one reason this substance warrants substantially greater recognition in discussions regarding biological approaches to cardiovascular wellness. Third, eugenol demonstrates well-documented capacity to decrease inflammation. Persistent systemic inflammation represents one of the most consequential factors accelerating the aging procedure. It damages arterial tissue, impairs hormonal signaling, disrupts sleep patterns, and hastens the energy and motivation decline, afflicting numerous men in their 60s forward. By decreasing body-wide inflammation, eugenol tackles a primary mechanism of decline, not merely its manifestations. Let me explain directly what physically occurs past the age of 60, not to discourage, but because grasping the mechanism is the foundation for modifying it. Inflammatory processes build up, arterial flexibility diminishes, hormonal production drops. In some individuals gradually, in others quite rapidly. Additionally, the body's threat response regulation, governed by cortisol hormones, frequently becomes disorganized, generating constantly high cortisol that progressively limits hormone production, narrows passages, worsens sleep disruption, and empties the inner strength and self-belief that once seemed inevitable. What emerges from this accumulation is something numerous men characterize in remarkably parallel language: perpetual tiredness without substantial exertion, psychological haziness, emotional detachment, physical numbness, as though existing in a body that's physically there, but not genuinely functional. What's critical to grasp is this represents neither unavoidable nor permanent. It's a physiological situation with identifiable explanations and significantly addressable interventions. Your cardiovascular system doesn't merely deteriorate, it responds to appropriate stimulation. And clove, particularly its eugenol content, supplies numerous such signals at once. As eugenol integrates into your system regularly, it starts repairing the three foundational mechanisms generating that experience of worsening vascular circulation, threat response regulation, and sleep patterns. I'll examine each individually. Before proceeding with deeper investigation, let me give you the functional approach. Since the technique matters as much as performing it, Here's my step-by-step guidance. Step 1 involves choosing 2 or 3 intact dried cloves, not powdered clove, whole dried specimens. Organic sources are preferable if accessible. Otherwise, quality whole cloves sourced reliably work equally effectively. Powder loses substantial potency of the volatile essence, the element delivering the therapeutic value. Step 2 means positioning 1 or 2 cloves between your molars. Gently fracture it. The moment it breaks, you encounter the distinctive flavor, that warm spiced sensation. That's eugenol contacting your mouth's tissues. Absorption commences immediately. Step 3 demands patience. Permit the essence to permeate your entire mouth. Inhale gradually and steadily via your nose. For your initial 30 seconds, simply rest the fractured clove and let your mouth's moisture dissolve the released essence naturally. The oral membrane is densely supplied with blood vessels, meaning compounds absorb their transfer into circulation rapidly and thoroughly. Step 4 starts after 30 seconds. Start gently chewing and moving it slowly. Continue discharging the remaining eugenol without pulverizing it too finely to manage. Chew for another 30 seconds, letting the essence coat your dental surfaces and gum foundation. Subsequently dispose of or ingest the remaining plant matter. Both approaches work similarly. What counts is absorbing the essence. That's your 60 seconds. That encompasses the complete procedure. Certain individuals experience outcomes within minutes, a gentle sensation in the torso, a sense of tranquil awareness, a noticeable shift in physical sensation. Some might require several days of repeated practice before cumulative systemic effects become apparent. That's completely regular. You're not generating a pharmaceutical surge. You're encouraging a biological progression. Biological changes depend on reliability, not urgency. Regarding optimal scheduling, this dimension matters considerably, and I want to offer you grounded guidance depending on both your body's mechanics and insights accumulated through my clinical practice. I suggest 2 occasions per day. Initially, in the late afternoon, roughly 60 moments before sleep. The biological reasoning follows this pattern. Evening prompts your nervous system to shift from its active alert stage, managed by your sympathetic division, toward its restorative recovery phase, managed by your parasympathetic division. This conversion permits the body to accomplish deep restoration. Regrettably, many men past 60 experience impaired transition. Cortisol stays elevated. Nervous activation persists. Sleep becomes superficial, disrupted, or inadequate. Beyond eugenol, clove harbors an additional important component, beta-caryophyllene. This substance engages with particular nervous system receptors, particularly those managing emotional state, worry response, and nervous regulation. When beta-caryophyllene attaches to these receptors, it dampens an overexcited threat mechanism. Cortisol normalizes, bodily strain diminishes, racing cognition settles. The outcome becomes smoother progression into restorative slumber, profoundly impacting hormone production. Testosterone emerges exclusively during rest, particularly in the profound phases many men past 60 neglect. Improved slumber produces increased testosterone. These two exist in constant connection. The morning session comes preceding consumption. Following hours without food, your body sits in a somewhat depleted circulatory condition. Clove chewing initially in daylight supports vascular opening and communicates a beginning activation message to your circulatory apparatus. Numerous men embracing this routine report sharper cognitive capacity, improved physical preparedness, and greater daily motivation, whether that's morning movement, gentle exercise, or simply approaching life with heightened involvement. Together, these sessions create a a recurring physiological communication channel, signaling your vascular, hormonal, and nervous pathways to remain tuned for well-being rather than deterioration. I want to devote greater focus to one of the most damaging elements in post-60 decline, one rarely articulated clearly enough: persistent cortisol accumulation. Numerous men share that their daily pressures are manageable. Overall existence feels satisfactory, no dramatic complications, yet they experience vacancy, weariness, apathy, disconnection from drive and enthusiasm. The misunderstanding involves this reality. Chronic stress needn't be dramatic to harm you. Ordinary persistent annoyances, financial strain, medical concerns, relational demands, decades of accumulated responsibility maintain adrenal function in continuous low-grade emergency. Cortisol gets released continuously instead of during actual emergencies when it evolved to serve. Your system wasn't engineered to withstand that steady flow. When cortisol remains persistently elevated, the results are severe. Testosterone gets actively decreased. Passages remain contracted. Slumber becomes fragmented. The motivation, confidence, and sensation of being alive linked to optimal testosterone gradually vanish. Numerous men in their later years experience aging consequences less than they experience chronic hormonal suppression results. Beta-caryophyllene directly tackles this mechanism by attaching to particular nervous receptors. It reduces the cascade of threat signaling, instructing the nervous apparatus at profound levels that vulnerability has passed. Cortisol decreases. Testosterone, no longer suppressed, can normalize. Men establishing this practice routinely convey remarkably consistent experiences: heaviness lifting from their midsection, mental brightness returning progressively and then rapidly, emotional calm they'd forgotten for years. Concurrently, a slow recurrence of appetite, inspiration, and authentic presence in their own existence. That's not psychological. It's your nervous apparatus reestablishing proper operation, and it originates from a 60-second daily habit. There's one additional dimension I regard as vitally crucial: the overlooked significance of mouth wellness. Let me pose something I regularly ask my patients. What's the status of your dental tissue health? If that question appears disconnected, let me clarify. Your oral cavity isn't separate from your remaining body. It's a doorway. The mouth area has substantial vessel networks, and damaged gum tissue from bacterial excess or persistent minor infection becomes a direct entry pathway where inflammatory particles and pathogens reach general circulation. Decades of investigation confirm solid links between insufficient oral hygiene and cardiovascular illness, weakened vascular performance, and elevated inflammatory indicators. The pathway is straightforward. Harmful bacteria from infected tissues infiltrate bloodstream, trigger protective reactions, create inflammation in vessel tissue, and worsen the vascular complications, undermining energy, circulation, and sexual capacity. When I inquire about mouth health and hear mentions of gum bleeding during dental cleaning, recurring small infections, or periodontist comments regarding early bone loss, I acknowledge that clinically, it transcends appearance, its vascular consequence. This is precisely where whole clove demonstrates advantage transcending its internal mechanisms. Clove essence rates as perhaps the most powerful natural germ fighter in scientific records. Its maintained historical application and contemporary research substantiates its capacity to suppress the bacteria initiating gum deterioration, decrease gum swelling, and maintain mouth tissue integrity. Chewing whole cloves coats dental surfaces, gum margins, interdental zones, and mouth tissues in eugenol-saturated substance, supplying antimicrobial and inflammation-decreasing activity exactly where bacterial colonization threatens most. Men adopting this practice frequently experience within 7 days cleaner feeling breath, decreased gum soreness, and previously common minor bleeding diminishing noticeably. But systemic advantage runs deeper. When oral environment improves, when the microbial highway from mouth to circulation closes, body-wide inflammatory stress declines. Blood circulation strengthens, vascular function advances, and systems, depending on uninterrupted quality circulation, your heart, your mind, your sexual tissues, start receiving what's been lacking. The connection between dental wellness and sexual capability rarely receives discussion, but it's factually established and represents one more reason this modest daily practice carries impacts exceeding its straightforwardness. Regarding what happens over time, I want to provide trustworthy expectations about shifts from persistent practice. Throughout your first week, most men executing this consistently experience faint yet genuine developments. Warmth sensations following each practice, refreshed oral sensation, modest cognitive sharpness improvements, less sluggish cognition, improved focus, sleep changes commence. Falling asleep might require minimally less time. Certain men find fewer nighttime interruptions. Daytime energy stays comparatively consistent, without the typical afternoon dip. Certain men detect resurgence of morning sexual readiness, a dependable indicator that nighttime testosterone production is recovering. By week 2's completion, modifications typically intensify and stabilize. Circulation advantages become evident: extremity warmth, reduced physical exertion difficulty, renewed bodily preparedness you'd overlooked. Slumber becomes richer and more restorative. Cortisol's emotional dominance diminishes. Mental clarity becomes clearer and steadier. By 30 days, men frequently describe a fundamental transformation challenging attribution to singular modifications since it's not singular. It represents accumulated results from better circulation, decreased inflammation, superior sleep, elevated testosterone, and 4 weeks of consistent messaging directing your neurological apparatus toward equilibrium. Sexual capacity improves. Intimate desire and actual performance return frequently beyond expectations. Daytime vitality sustains. Partners observe differences. And men repeatedly employ one specific phrase I hear regularly in my practice: "I'm recognizing myself again." That articulation carries deeper significance than surface appearance, because recognizing your own identity, maintaining the energy, mindfulness, and motivation characterizing your authentic self isn't supplementary. It's fundamental to a completely lived life. For lasting benefit, recognize that the approach functions when you function with it. Dedication is non-negotiable. It forms the complete mechanism. Let me share 3 essential perspectives for integrating this into your body's lasting wellness strategy. Initially, treat clove chewing with equal importance as your dental routine, 60 seconds. Maintain small quantities of whole dried cloves in your bathroom, your sleeping area, your kitchen, your automobile. Eliminate all obstacles to the routine. Men achieving results practice consistently, not occasionally with delayed expectations. Secondly, include consistent physical activity. You needn't run marathons or perform intense strength work. A consistent 20 to 30 moment walk influences cardiovascular health, glucose processing, and testosterone production far beyond general comprehension. Movement represents one of the body's most powerful wellness communications. Pair it with clove practice and advantages compound. Thirdly, prioritize restful sleep. The hormonal reconstruction occurring through profound rest remains irreplaceable. No product, no habit, no morning schedule can make up for extended, insufficient slumber. During your hour preceding rest, limit bright displays. Keep your sleeping quarters chilled and dim, and use the evening clove session as a purposeful nervous system signal for movement into recovery. Let me conclude with what I believe represents the most significant message I've conveyed. The energy, vitality, and motivation decline, affecting numerous men entering their 60s, isn't individual failing, it's not deficiency, it's not inescapable. It represents the anticipated consequence of physiological systems operating in inappropriate conditions: excessive swelling, excessive stress hormones, insufficient blood vessel expansion, insufficient deep slumber extending too long. The remarkable characteristic of those mechanisms is their receptiveness. They're prepared for renewal. They don't require forcing. They require assistance. Everything here represents among the easiest, most accessible, and most rigorously validated beginning points available. Two substances, eugenol and beta-caryophyllene, functioning concurrently on circulatory mechanisms, stress regulation, sleep patterns, dental hygiene, and hormonal stability. Delivered via 60 seconds of purposeful practice daily from substances costing virtually nothing at any market. This isn't sorcery. I want clarifying that absolutely. Shortcuts don't exist, and I won't disrespect your reasoning by pretending otherwise. What does exist is genuine physiology, your body's inherited intelligence responding to appropriate activation given persistently and deliberately. I've witnessed men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s retrieve vitality they genuinely stopped anticipating, not from discovering some pricey solution, but from embracing a modest daily routine and allowing their biology the period needed for restoration. That's obtainable for you starting this evening. Proceed to your kitchen, retrieve 2 whole cloves, briefly pause, then slowly chew them mindfully for exactly 60 moments. Let eugenol execute its function. Enable your biology to absorb the communication, then replicate it tomorrow and subsequently. Your physiology invariably desires restoration. It invariably wants to function optimally. On some fundamental level, it perpetually searches for suitable information to activate that recovery process. Your responsibility simply entails furnishing it. When this message provided something beneficial, a different perspective on your physiology, or one concrete action tonight, distribute it among the men requiring it. A colleague, sibling, father. These exchanges possess weight, and your message might redirect someone's well-being trajectory. Register your support so additional people encountering this receive it. Activate notifications for later content regarding biological approaches to circulatory wellness, hormonal recovery, rest enhancement, and living fully across every stage. Post your location. What connected with you? Should you're prepared commencing, reply starting tomorrow in the comments, because that promise stated externally signals the commencement of an altered wellness narrative. I'm Dr. William Lee, and I leave you with this. Existence after 60 isn't conclusion. It represents continuation, and its contents remain yours to compose. Your biology hasn't finished. It awaits your signal that you're continuing as well. Consume, restore, advance.